I think we're about 2 minutes past the mark. So, without further ado, welcome to this inaugural Criteria Compass webinar. This is meant to be a quarterly series. We want to bring you a little bit of the latest of what we're hearing in today's hiring landscape. We'd like to feature, a few customers of ours. We have a wonderful one today, and give you a little bit of preview into our roadmap and the investments we're making. And we certainly have met the bar in this session. So Greg, if you'll just go to the next slide. I am your host and MC today, Jam Khan. I'm the CMO of Criteria. I'm also joined by Greg Isaacs, our Chief Product Officer, as well as Karina Stasek, who leads people and culture from Patagonia. I'm super thrilled for her section, and yours as well, Greg. So I hope you're all familiar with Criteria. We're a platform that allows companies to find, grow great talent. We use science-backed tools for both hiring, interviewing, and post-hire employee development. A lot of you are customers, so welcome and thank you. For those of you maybe a little less familiar with Criteria, I hope by the end of this session you also have a much better sense of who we are and what drives us. So a little bit about today's webinar, 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the amount of Q&A. We're going to plan this so there is time at the end. On that note, you'll see that we have both the chat as well as a Q&A section. It'll be wonderful if you put the questions that you have in the Q&A. That allows us to make sure they don't get lost in the chat. We may not be able to answer it real time depending on who's best suited to answer the question, but it'll allow us to both capture the responses, and then when we do share a recording of this event, all those questions will also be available to all of you and the answers. However, we don't want the chat to just be a graveyard. So as you hear things, you might agree, you might disagree, you might have a point of view. Let's keep this interactive and lively. So use the chat for your thoughts, use the Q&A for your comments. They should both be in that bottom Zoom panel of yours. So here's sort of why we're here, right? Feels like the ground is shifting beneath us. More than half of recruiters now view AI-generated resumes as a red flag, and over 3/4 say that it's harder than ever to tell if a candidate's experience is genuine. The traditional playbook for screening and evaluating talent doesn't just hold up to this new reality. This is exactly why staying ahead of the AI curve isn't just optional anymore. It's now essential for everyone involved in hiring or talent management. So today we're going to dig into what that means, what's changing, and most importantly, how can we adopt our practices to a future where authenticity, skill, and growth potential matter more than ever. So let's dive right in. I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about the latest market shifts that are shaking up hiring in honestly 2025 and beyond. We're going to have a customer spotlight. The wonderful Karina is going to showcase how Patagonia is at the forefront of a lot of this. And then Greg is going to share some product highlights and some really exciting updates. And then we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. As we gear up in this, we'd love to also hear from you what your biggest hiring challenge your team is facing is right now. What are you dealing with? No wrong answers. Just really interesting to get a point of view. We know that AI and hiring is top of mind, but I think there's a lot of nuances to a lot of that as well. So during the course of this session, doesn't have to be like right now, have a think about it, but we'd love to just hear from folks on what you're facing and what you really think is one of the biggest challenges you have right now. And with that, we'll jump right into the meat of things. If you can just go to the next slide. So I want to zoom out for a moment and just look at the very nature of how work has evolved. Work 1.0, as it were, it took off during the Industrial Revolution when factories, machines, and mass production put the world to work in an entirely new way. Then we moved into Work 2.0, the corporate era. It was dominated by organizational charts, boardrooms, and the rise of management culture. The past few decades has brought us Work 3.0, the digital age. This is when computers, networks, and the internet transformed offices, the way we connect to information, and frankly, the way we connect to one another. And perhaps the most dramatic example of the digital age, at least for me, was the way work shifted during COVID. Almost overnight, many of us became remote employees, and many organizations are still exploring the right balance. And the speed of that change, right, that the pandemic forced upon us served as a little bit of a preview to the kind of rapid adjustment that occasionally we need to make. Because here's where we are now. Welcome to Work 4.0. We're stepping into a fundamentally new era, one sort of defined by AI augmentation. And this doesn't feel like just another technology wave. It's about humans and intelligent systems working side by side, reshaping how value gets created, how we make decisions, and what talent itself even looks like. So as you look within our organizations, our mission is being rewritten. Work 4.0 is both an opportunity, but also a challenge to rethink how we hire, develop, and organize people in an environment where AI is a collaborator, not just a tool. Next. And here's how quickly AI is becoming central to the hiring process. In just the last year, the percentage of hiring professionals using AI in their workflows has doubled, now reaching 25%. That's a quarter of our field actively leveraging AI tools for hiring or talent management. But the information isn't just on the employer side. On the candidate side, nearly 3 in 10 job seekers are using AI to apply for jobs. And even more striking, 40% of candidates are now tailoring their resumes specifically to pass AI screening systems. This is a new reality where both sides of the hiring equation are using advanced technology. It's changing how we source, screen, and select talent. And it's raising new opportunities, new risks, and new questions for anyone responsible in talent. Next. For me, it feels like we're at a tipping point, and it's time to say it really plainly. The resume is dead. Every minute, 11,000 applications are processed on LinkedIn alone. It's no longer just a question of volume, but of authenticity. By 2028, Gartner estimates that a quarter of all job applications, like 25%, will be outright fake, powered by advanced AI tools that can generate or tailor resumes in seconds. But here's a real truth. Even before AI, research has shown that the resumes are a fundamentally flawed tool. There was an MIT study that showed that most recruiters make up their minds in just 6 seconds, often on details barely connected to true capability or fit. We've known for years that resumes exclude great unconventional talent. They exaggerate the truth and they say little about what actually drives performance. Now with AI, candidates are gaming systems, employees are using bots to screen bots. The resume has finally lost all meaning. And so it's become a brittle, hackable artifact in a completely transformed hiring landscape. So the question we face now isn't how do we get better at resume review? It's what comes next. How do we build trust, connection, and evidence of ability in a world where anyone can manufacture a perfect story with one click? Next, right? So if the resume is dead, what takes its place? For decades, hiring has centered around one core question: what have you done before? But now, in a world where skills, tools, and even entire industries are being reinvented in real time, that's no longer enough. We need to shift our perspective to what can you become next? This is the real challenge and opportunity of the AI era, unlocking people's potential for growth, adaptability, and new value creation. And the numbers make this urgent. The World Economic Forum projects by the end of this decade, 39% of today's core skills will be obsolete. If that's true, then static credentials, degrees, titles, old accomplishments are almost irrelevant. To build winning teams now, we have to look beyond the rearview mirror. We need new ways to assess capability, potential, and readiness for what comes next, not just what someone's done in the past. Next, please. So traditionally, we have relied on degrees and work history, checking what someone has done and for how long. Our decisions have rested on static resumes with all the limitations and biases those bring. Talent pools have been narrow, shaped by who happens to have the right credentials or who fits a familiar mold. And of course, screening has mostly been manual, slow, subjective, and difficult to scale. Work 4.0 kind of flips the script. We now have the power to look at real skills and potential, not just pedigree. Instead of static resumes, we use dynamic assessments that can simulate real work and measure actual ability. We expand our reach to broader, more diverse talent pools, opening doors to people who have capabilities even if they don't have the traditional background. And we leverage AI augmented evaluation to screen more fairly and efficiently, helping us see things humans alone might miss. This isn't just a tech upgrade. This is a shift towards a more inclusive, future ready, and performance driven approach for everyone involved in hiring and building great teams. Next. So we are seeing a real positive shift. Skills-based hiring is on the rise. In our 2024 hiring benchmark report that had over 400 respondents, more than half the companies we surveyed are now moving away from legacy credentials and embracing hiring strategies that actually focus on what talent can do. 74% were going deeper, reevaluating how they measure skills, experimenting with new tools, real-world tasks, and authentic assessments. And 68% are going back to the drawing board and rewriting job descriptions to highlight the skills that matter most. And perhaps the most encouraging for me, 1 in 5 companies that adopt skills-based hiring have removed degree requirements altogether. This means a huge opportunity for untapped talent, more diverse teams, and a playing field that actually rewards real capability and potential. So what's the takeaway? The market is embracing the future and putting skills at the center of how we hire and grow our people. To me, that's a trend worth celebrating. Our 2025 hiring benchmark is being finalized, and I can't wait to share them with all of you in the next webinar that we have. And with that, I think a perfect segue into our next section. Go one more like Greg. As we sort of explore, right, the hiring landscape is changing faster than ever. Resumes, which once anchored the hiring process, are losing reliability. And the real challenge today, we need better ways to truly assess skills and, just as importantly, to uncover each person's potential to grow. Karina and the team at Patagonia have sort of been at the forefront of tackling these challenges head on. So I'm really excited for her to share her perspective and her insights on building teams for the future. Karina, thanks so much for joining. The floor is yours.
Jam, thank you so much. And hello to all the wonderful people listening. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to represent Patagonia and be here with Criteria, a pivotal partner in what we're building here. Make no mistake, Patagonia is in the business of saving our home planet. And so when I came here, in the high volume landscape of hiring that we do for our distribution centers, our customer experience contact centers, our customer experience guides in the retail centers, we value the human experience because the humans will save the planet. And that is the most important. And I think what we have seen in the hiring landscape is that talent acquisition is looking for really smart and interesting ways to build technology that makes it scalable. And the important journey that we've taken here at Patagonia is that, yes, we need to be scalable, but yes, we cannot forget why we're here and that the humans and the whole human matters. So, when I joined and we were looking at all the different tools in front of us, the thing that spoke most to us is wanting to be able to see everybody through and past the AI noise. I think what we're seeing in today's landscape is exactly what Jam spoke to. We're seeing AI created resumes. One of the most interesting things here at Patagonia, like we ask, why do you want to work for Patagonia? Well, we're seeing more and more AI generated answers. And the reality is we have to cut through that. And we really want to see the whole person in context and value all of their strengths in this process. And I think that, if you sit around long enough on subreddits and LinkedIn, people are frustrated with the hiring experience. And, with Criteria, we really took a hard look at what they had to offer and how they allow us to see the whole human and appreciate that whole human in the context of the roles that we're hiring. So if we can hit next, I can go into the next slide and talk about that. So what we chose, we value the human experience in our stores, on our phones. So for example, I'll share with this audience, we have a call center that answers customer calls. We don't use scripts here. We empower the human being on the calls to take care of that person in the way that they feel is human and meant to be. So much that, like, one of the favorite stories that I'll share about this is that, we have this famous story called the Eagle story. And one of our very entry level customer service representatives in our call center received a phone call that an Eagle was in danger. They didn't know who else to call. And in most call centers, there'd be a script in front of you and you'd have to read and just process them out. Well, that's just not how we handle things at Patagonia. We want our people to have the critical thinking and emotional skills to work with everyone and help everyone no matter what that issue is. And, our call center rep, sat on the phone with that customer and found the right wildlife refuge to help her and to push her through. And it's one of our most famous and beautiful stories about why we still genuinely care about the human interaction and the human that's on the other end of the line with our customers. So, in high volume hiring, which I've been doing for many years now at this point, I've been in many, you know, very well known companies around high volume hiring. And I think what we often try to do in that process is we try to process the widgets, and people just simply aren't widgets. They're human beings with real feelings, real high stakes in their career. And then we have this whole other new workforce that's coming in that isn't skilled, and the resume doesn't work, and they are sick of being on LinkedIn and trying to be seen. And so we want to give everybody an opportunity, regardless of their career journey, to see what their capabilities are, what their skills are, what their strengths are, and how that would be in context best suited for Patagonia as a human being. So, it was a real easy decision after many, many reviews of vendors and options. And I know that everybody's trying to jump onto this AI bus, but the reality is that there has to be a delicate balance in how we handle our human beings and how we work with them. If you can go to the next slide. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, Jam, and we can, you definitely jump in with some questions. But I think, the biggest thing about, criteria is that we allow everybody to come in the door. There was a time where we had so many people that wanted to work for Patagonia that we were inundated with resumes and applications, and we had to cap those, or we had to limit the days. And I just didn't see that as a viable option in my role today. We want the door open for everyone, and we want to see everyone that comes in the door for who they are and appreciate how they in context can be a champion for saving our home planet. So, there's just so much to talk about, but Jam, I'll let you jump in with any questions you have about our approach.
Yeah, let's start actually at the top, Karina, because that's really top of mind. I mean, you heard from my little opening bit, like, AI is very pervasive and feels sort of unavoidable, and would love to hear kind of how are you viewing something that could potentially be very helpful but also harmful? Like, where does the science and benefits of AI and the ethics intersect for you, and how's Patagonia taking that on?
Right. Well, for one, we want to be completely unbiased. We welcome everyone in our door that wants to save our home planet. So that is beyond generations, beyond race, beyond religious background. We want to support everybody and bring everybody into this one mission. Where AI is harmful is, I think we're still in this age where we're the human at the end of the loop and verifying what's happening in AI. I mean, if anybody's used AI, like, to trust that with a human life and their application is pretty scary. And I just feel like we're at this point where, if I have to still be the human at the end of the loop around the AI, we simply just don't have everything worked out. Data privacy, unbiased, scientifically proven. And in addition, like, those people that are in our chat GPT boxes fighting for jobs, they actually do want to speak to a human. They want to have the human experience, and they're simply responding to what they think they're supposed to be doing. I think what criteria has allowed us to do is to see everybody in the most unbiased and science-backed way. The team that surrounds us, and one of the biggest reasons we chose them as a partner, is your IO psychology practice and steering committee. It is such a trusted partner in the decades of research and science that you've put behind it. We can't officially say that yet about AI, and we still have to be very careful about that process.
I think that's why, Karina, even the framing of AI augmentation was very deliberate. There is a tendency to say, "Hey, this AI is so good, I'm going to let it do all the work." If
Yeah.
used with, I love the human the loop sort of analogy. we're not there yet, maybe we never should be. But when something is as powerful a tool as it is, there could be this tendency to just let it sort of take over. And
Mhm.
we are talking about, yeah, we're talking about employment, we're talking about a candidate experience, being able to use it in measured control with somebody at the end of it feels like the right approach. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of candidate screening, like how are you finding? We hear it's inconsistent. At the same time, it could potentially be perceived as impersonal, although there's ways to mitigate that. It's almost impossible to screen without it. So how do you approach, the use of AI in the screening process?
So we really aren't using AI. We're leaning more on Criteria's platform. And I'll give you some great examples. So Criteria's platform, one, allows everybody to come in the door. The resume is a 2D experience, and it's not very reliable, to your point earlier. What Criteria allows us to do is have a three-dimensional experience with the human being. So even beyond, if they ask, some of them will answer still an AI generated question of why do you want to work for Patagonia, because they want to show their best. But when we bring them through Criteria, that is really our secret sauce, is that we still at scale can see that whole human being. And if anybody's worked in Criteria, there are test batteries that we put together. We work with the IO psychologists on, do we need more patients? Do we need, to align with Patagon values, do we need somebody who's more patient? Well, if I told you the Eagle story, yes. Where does stress tolerance fall in that? And there's been a couple of, just recently across my desk, I have looked at some of these Criteria applications, and we had a Starbucks person apply, and they don't type all the time. And so they didn't pass our typing test, but we were able to just quickly look at this person's strengths, at their soft skills, at who they really are as a human being. And we're like, this person is perfect. But we wouldn't have seen that in a resume. We wouldn't have seen that in a typing test. We wouldn't even see that in a homegrown created test that is proprietary to Patagonia. And so we are really embracing the beauty of like bringing people in to see them at scale for who they really are, and in context, how they will really do well here to save our home planet.
That's a great example, Karina. I know in the chat, a lot of the challenges of hiring centered around finding qualified candidates, and you know, it may require rethinking what constitutes as qualified, and the qualifications you think you need might not be the qualifications a person has, but qualifications don't equal capabilities. Um,
Right.
and to that end, do you think with some of the, how people are both using AI in their own work for better, are you looking at sort of hard skills versus soft skills a little bit differently?
Yeah.
I've mixed feelings about, you use AI to spruce up your resume. There's a part of that feels like, yes, you should. It shows me that you care and you're actually putting in the effort. It's
Right.
when it crosses the line into the embellishment that it becomes a bit like risky. But it certainly does shift, like, these tools shift how we can approach work. Has much thought gone into just candidate profiles because of AI?
Absolutely. Again, the resume and the experience, and we have a new generation of workers coming in that don't have all the experience in the world, but have all the soft skills that Patagonia is looking for, right? And so, like, when you look at hard skills, and going back to my story about this recent applicant we were reviewing that didn't pass the typing test, if you're mixing drinks for Starbucks all day, are you really typing that much? Like, let's be real. And they weren't that off, really. And our belief is like we're more invested in the human being as a whole, and understanding that they had all the soft skills and strengths that would make them successful in this role through Criteria's window. And we are now, and we could assess that, this typing skill will come within a month. Usually people type a lot faster. And I think that in the high volume and recruitment business, we get so focused on just processing the widgets. People don't fit perfectly into holes and squares in a puzzle. They're all unique. I don't consider anybody a widget. I consider everybody a human being. And I think that when we start getting into that phase of like processing them through a technical system or AI, we're losing the fidelity of the human being. We're losing the fidelity of the connection points we're trying to make in this role, or the roles that we're trying to hire at Patagonia. And at the end of the day, if you walk through Patagonia's doors, we are all about connection and human experience. And so in this age of AI, we really value the soft skills much higher than the hard skills. We feel that those hard skills can be developed over time. What this just allows us to see is, on the hard skill side, where are you at on the spectrum? What do we need to do to develop you on that side? Because that's easy. It's the soft skills that aren't.
And I think it's one of the wonderful sort of equalizing sort of forces about AI is it does make the hard skills are getting easier and easier, and that puts more of a emphasis on those sort of soft skills.
Yeah.
Last question before we move on, like what does sort of AI proof ethically sound hiring look like at Patagonia?
Uh, what it is to us is that everybody that comes through the door is seen, and that everybody is welcomed based on who they are, not what we want them to be. And I think I think that unfortunately that's some of what AI is pushing us to do, is like AI is telling us how to be, and how to present ourselves and how to show ourselves. But the reality is that we don't want to lose the fidelity of the authentic connection and the humans that are coming through our door. We want real connection. We want our customers at Patagonia to feel real connection, and we want them to know that they are truly valued. So it is a path that I think is delicate, and I think it holds a lot of responsibility. And I think that in the future, what I would advise for all companies is to step back and run parallel tests. Also think about, from a Patagonia's perspective, AI has environmental implications. So when we think about the candidates that are applying and using AI, like, please don't burn the ocean over that. Let's use it for something really powerful to change the world, and let's use it in a very balanced and delicate way. And I think that's the other part, that I look at from a, eco-conscious perspective, is that AI is making such a push and such a forward progress, that we also need to be more responsible about how we're thinking we're using it and what it really helps us to do.
I love that you also brought in the environmental impact. That's why I think just the approach of just looking at zooming out and looking at the entire picture is, Patagonia represents every bit of that. So, no better brand to have a strong point of view on AI and HR. Thanks to this, Corinne. I think you've got a little bit more, but appreciate
Yeah.
the conversation.
Yeah.
I'll hand it
I mean,
back to you.
we talked a little bit about how criteria helps Patagonia see beyond the resume. I talk about our customer experience contact center and how we don't have scripts. A lot of contact centers have scripts, and they run a metric about how long you were on the phone. And the idea is that you get off as soon as possible. That is not how we run our metrics. And so we want to work with the people that can, critically think and as an individual. We want individuals that have empathy and that really care about the human being on the other side. And you can't see those soft skills in a resume, and you can't see those soft skills in a resume at volume. It's just not possible. And I think we all realize that how we do it really matters. I think the most important thing too is that we care about the science. So, what science we choose to put behind the tools we need to scale and to still see the human being is truly important and precious to us. And criteria has been the most trusted partner of all the things that we have looked at and how we integrate into this process. I think another thing is that it's enlightening in the process of, it's not just so much about us learning about the candidates, but even in our internal studies, as we were starting to use criteria, it was a nice reflection for, and I've seen this over many, many years working with criteria, a reflection for organizations and leaders. What are we leaning towards hiring? What are we missing? What have we been, just humanly biased in our process without certain tools? And so how, how can we enlighten ourselves and learn about how we make our orgs more unbiased, bring in individuals with, their own unique stories to tell our story and to work for the planet and to save our home planet. Like, that's just so important to us. And so I think it's a two-way street, I think. And the other piece is that as fast as this day and age is moving, not everybody has the innate qualities of understanding soft skills, understanding the whole human in context, understanding what strengths and challenges and how you work with those challenges, not in a way that's negative, but in a way that truly honors the whole human being. I mean, one of the things, outside of Patagonia is I'm a self-actualization coach. And, that is one of the things we really focus on in self-actualization coaching is you accept the whole human, and you accept that whole human as they are, and you work with them in their context and in their skill sets, and you develop them in their whole selves, not what you want them to be. And I think that empowering our managers and criteria, not just beyond the assessments, but the workplace insights, the employee personality exam, like all of these things empower our leaders and managers to have that whole human view and encourage and structure their leadership in a way that welcomes them as a whole person. Are you still there, Jam?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting things, like, I'll share, is that in this race to scale, in this race to AI, I think I will share a really interesting story about, criteria, not just as a process for how we screen and bring candidates into our organization, but also how we shape our organization and the microcultures in our organization. One of the most interesting things that came out of a recent study that we did internally was that our internal already hired organizations, so one of them, I think 42% scored 20 or below on stress tolerance. And there's been some recent studies about generationally how the workforce is changing. And so there needs to be an adaptation to bridge the beautiful history of Patagonia and what it's built and bring it into the new generation in a way that can communicate clearly and be embraced by this new generation. Not all information is processed and done the same way generation to generation. So it's actually helping us shape what we do as a microculture in our peer-to-peer networks, how we shape and coach and work and skill up those individuals in a way that they feel heard and seen, and that we embrace this new generation coming into the workforce. So I think there's just so much more to this story beyond just the application, but actually how we lead Patagonia into the next generation.
It's powerful stuff, Karina. And I think, there's no doubt that AI is changing the way we work, but this fundamental belief that people still make it matter is a great North Star to have. And not sure if you have the answer to this, but I see a really good question posed here by Brent around the correlation between assessments and actual behavior. I know we try to measure it across our portfolio, but is that something that you actively measure to see how to tailor and continue to improve on the assessments? Is a correlation between the assessments you use and performance or behavior?
Absolutely. So it's never, again, we use, I'm a strong believer that data is essential to understanding the story, but it is not the story. And so we use, I've always been a big proponent of taking the criteria data and following the history of the candidate from when they're a candidate to when they're employed, and through the entire timeline of their tenure with us. And so I think it's a really pivotal thing is to take those performance metrics, take the information you've learned about that human through their application and through criteria, but then have the contextual conversations with leadership in our calibrations and our discussion about what all of this data matters, how this data matters, and how it tells the story. And I think that, I can't praise criteria enough, because not only do we do that internally, but criteria offers this place where we sit down and we have a conversation with your IO psychologist about how we interpret it and how we mature it based on their expertise that's science-backed and unbiased, but also our cultural learnings and our cultural data and experiences and context to really serve the people and to make sure that we have a strong, united culture.
That's wonderful. And selfishly, it's sort of a virtuous cycle for us as well, because that feedback helps the investments that we have to make in our own assessments. So it always works out when everybody wins.
Yeah. Are there any more questions, or did I answer the question that
If there's more
hopefully that?
questions, folks, there's a Q&A tab in there. Put the questions in there. There's none yet, but
Okay.
no doubt as we continue, you guys will have some. And thank you so much, Karina. I'll hand it over to you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Karina. That was awesome. I've always loved Patagonia, and just listening to you and your presentation reinforces why you're best in class. So thank you for that. That was really great. Hi everyone, Greg Isaacs, Chief Product Officer. And so over the next 12 or 13 minutes, I'm going to walk through our product roadmap, which we're really excited to cover. And it is a really exciting time for Criteria. We've spent a lot of time listening to our clients and your unique challenges, and also analyzing this really rapidly evolving landscape. And so the capabilities that I'm going to share today really are designed to meet the needs of you all. And so happy to walk through them. Just a little bit of a high level for those of you who may not be as familiar with Criteria. Over the last several years, we've been spending a lot of time talking to customers, understanding the market dynamic, and it's led us on an exciting journey. The journey has been to create a fully integrated talent success suite that helps you not only on the hiring side, but also on the post-hiring side. And so we've always, though, remained at our essence focused on two key things. Number one, best in class in science. You heard Karina talk about that quite a bit. And the second is an easy to use product. And so today we enable our clients to assess. We have arguably the deepest and broadest assessment portfolio on the market, covering 5 different categories as well and 25 different assessment types. But we've taken that capability to create a really amazing suite of interviewing products, and then all the way through onboarding and development. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here in the very bottom, if you can see my cursor, is we're trying to build a compounding talent signal. That's just another name for, to Karina's point, understanding the whole human, or the 3D version of the human, to help you make the most informed decisions about who to hire and potentially how to help them be successful in the role. The other thing about this slide that it doesn't show is that we have assessments and capabilities in 25 different languages. So for those of you who are global in nature, we can support you. And we also support over 60 applicant tracking systems, ATSs or HRISs. We know that you've spent a lot of money on your infrastructure, and we want to be able to support that. So with that, I'm going to walk you through in some detail some of the capabilities that have launched and some of the capabilities that will be launching. I'm going to cover the items in blue today. Anything with a check mark means it's launched. Anything with a circle means it's coming. This is our publicly available roadmap. We're happy to share that with you. If you'd like more details, just let us know. We're happy to share this with you and walk you through it in some detail. I would also say this is about 20% of our roadmap. There's a lot of under the hood work that happens to make the experience more predictive, better for candidates, just easier for everyone, that we just didn't have time to cover today, but happy to do that in a different session. So let me talk a little bit about AI in general, because this session has been really focused in AI, and it'd be helpful to talk about our evolution as a company around AI. And so in general, we use AI in certain parts of our platform when it makes sense to do so. For example, for processing or analyzing a large amounts of information like a transcript. But we don't use AI just for AI's sake. And just like our standard assessments, anytime we use AI, we really follow a very rigorous set of rules and approach. Specifically, everything we do has to be based on organizational psychology, meaning it's got to be predictive, has to be valid, has to be fair. We use a ton of data to make sure that everything we do does fulfill that prior promise of being predictive and minimizing bias. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things is that, just like an assessment, whether it uses AI or not, or a video technology, if it uses AI or not, we're putting humans at the center of decision making. We're just giving you one important, very powerful data point, or many different data points, to create that 3D image. but it's up to you, the human, to make that final decision. And we know that there's a lot of soft evaluation that goes into the process, and we want to be able to support that as well. So let's talk about our product suite and some of the capabilities we're really excited about. We've had a structured interviewing suite of products for a number of years, and let me take a minute to talk about what a structured interview is. It's a simple idea. Basically, every candidate gets the same set of questions that are designed to measure the competencies required for a role, and then every candidate gets the same evaluation guide, meaning the interviewers are using the same guide. And the benefits are many. There's efficiency, there's a reduction in bias. Data has shown over and over again that this approach is twice as effective as let's call an ad hoc interview. And candidates like it better as well because they feel like the process is in their favor or at least fair. But often what happens is that structured interviews fail. And the reason is because, number one, the questions are not related to the competencies you're trying to measure. There's no evaluation guide. Or if there is an evaluation guide, it's not being adhered to. I'm guilty of this sometimes. I have an evaluation guide. Sometimes I'm tired. I don't use it the way I should be. And so in this case, there's a technology to help you and all of us be better at interviewing. So let's talk about our interviewing solutions, and then we're going to talk about some unique capabilities we've launched. We have two solutions today. One is video interviewing, where the questions are pre-recorded. The candidate records their responses at any given time on any device, and you as an evaluator can review those. And then the live interviewing, as you might suspect, is in real time using Zoom, Teams, over the phone, whatever it may be. Today, we're going to focus on video interviewing and a new set of capabilities we've launched called Interview Intelligence. So what is Interview Intelligence? Well, it's basically three things. Number one, it gives you an instant transcript of what the candidate has said. So you don't need to worry about note-taking. You can just listen to what they say. It gives you an objective summary of what the candidate says. Again, no judgment, no evaluation, just an objective summary. And then the third and most powerful, it gives you an automated score based on the questions you create and the evaluation guide you create as well. And I'm going to show you these in detail. But what it means is up until 2024, clients had to manually look at every video interview. Today, that happens automatically within seconds. And so that's very powerful, very accurate, creates a lot of efficiency for you. And again, let's walk through how that happens. Okay, so this is how the setup works today. You can create any question you want using our drop-down competencies, or you can create your own competency here. So these are screenshots from our platform. In this example, I picked a competency called strategic management. Then the other unique part is you can then create your own questions. You have a lot of flexibility of question creation. We guide you to say if this question is a good question or a bad question. Once you've done that, you then create your own evaluation guide. We populate this guide for you, so we've taken all the heavy lifting out of it, but you can adjust this evaluation guide. What I've shown you, you can do in a minute. So one question takes 1 minute. You have 3 interview questions at 3 minutes of your time to create a really powerful structured interview. Then at the end, you can add some nice little bells and whistles. You can decide what the prep time is for the candidate to answer the interview. It could be instantaneous. You could manage how much time you want to give them. And of course, you can record the question as well. So once you've done that, the candidate goes through the process here. They get the question, they provide their answer. And this is where the power comes in. We offer you transcripts. So these are verbatim transcripts of what the candidate says. This is our CEO, by the way, who's acting as a candidate. So you can get access to the candidate transcript. You can also get access to the objective summary. Again, what the candidate said. There's no judgment here, no evaluation. We're just giving you a rundown of the interview at the question and an overview of the entire interview. And then at the end, we give you an automated score. And that automated score is at the question level. So in this case, the candidate got 3 out of 5 as a rating, and we give you the overall rating. So let me show you how this works, because there are going to be lots of tools out there that purport to do this, but our approach is as rigorous as it comes. So how does it work? This is under the hood. We take the candidate transcript, okay? So right then and there, we've minimized bias because we don't know who the candidate is. We don't know what they look like. We don't know what they sound like. We just take the transcript and we look at that and compare it to what you determine are the criteria for success in a role. So the client, in this case, you have told us these are the important elements to have a 5-star, a 4-star, or 3-star. And our AI that we've trained looks at the transcript. We're not looking for words, keywords. We're looking for the context and the meaning and the accuracy. And then we're comparing that to the evaluation guide here. The way we did this is that you heard Karina talk about our organizational psychology practice. We scored over 5,000 video interviews ourselves, only looking at transcripts and comparing those to guides to come up with a model that works. And today we can say that our AI is as strong as an expert human rater. So there's a lot of work that went into building this. But I think at the end of the day, what it allows you to do is that if you look at a candidate experience today, you have assessments here, which are scored very highly. You can have video interviews here, but you can also move video interviews up and higher into your process. So happy to dig into more detail around this, but really exciting outcome. Okay, next product. We have a criteria language proficiency assessment. It's one of our most popular assessments. It measures reading, writing, and listening. Today, I'm happy to announce that we're going to be launching the ability to measure speaking soon. Okay, so it's going to come this year. What does that mean? Well, rather than just saying a simple tool where have someone speak and repeat back what you hear, what our AI will do is that it'll actually have a candidate look at an image, for example, speak to that. And so we're looking at the accuracy of what they say, the fluency, the prosody to come up with a score. Again, so this will give you a full view of someone's capability around English language, and you can decide which you want to use. So, for example, if you just want to focus on speaking, you can pick that. If you want to focus on reading, you can pick that. If you want the whole totality of the candidate and their proficiency, you can pick that as well. But we're not stopping with English. I'm also really happy to say we're going to be launching a Spanish language proficiency assessment that's going to be coming soon. It'll have all the benefits and the goodness of the English language, but focus on Spanish speakers as well. So stay tuned for that. Let's switch gears a little bit to cognitive assessments. Many of you are probably using our cognitive assessments, namely CCAT. Customers love it. The two pieces of feedback we've gotten is that how do we make it configurable, meaning I only want to focus on particular capabilities of their cognitive ability, maybe math and logic, and how do you make it adaptable, meaning if you get a question right, it gets harder. If you get a question wrong, it gets easier for a better candidate experience. Today, I'm happy to announce that we've actually launched an express version of what we're calling Citrus. It stands for Criteria Think, Reason, Solve, Express. The good news is it's adaptive, and in as little as 5 minutes, you can get an overview of a candidate's general cognitive ability. In development now and coming by the end of the year, you will have the ability of the same assessment, but to pick and choose which of these 5 areas you would like to focus on. So for example, if you only want to focus on mathematical reasoning, you can do that. If you would like them all, you can do that as well. And again, it's going to be adaptable, configurable. Again, just another example of how I think we're leading the market and listening to customers in terms of our assessment capability. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about TestMaker. So many of you use TestMaker, which is our custom authoring tool. 2 new capabilities we're really excited about. Number one is you can now, or soon you'll be able to upload videos. And so what that allows you to do to the second example is you can create your own situational judgment test. You can, for example, have a question prompted to a candidate being an angry customer or asking them a difficult question, and then give them a multiple choice or a true false or a free text response here. So again, it allows you to create questions based on your business needs, and video has been a request for quite some time, so we're happy to deliver on it in the very near term. But we're not stopping there with TestMaker. We're also going to be launching a library of hard skills tests. These tests will focus on things like technical ability, like Python, particular products like QuickBooks. We're going to have close to 30 of them. And these are just templates. So you can basically take them, you can remove questions, you can add questions, but it is a library that you can use right out of the box to test for some of these capabilities, including proficiency around AI. So let's talk about candidate integrity real quick. That's a really hot topic. One area we want to focus on is ensuring that the candidate is who they say they are and that you have a high level of trust in that. we have launched recently proctoring using AI analysis. So what does proctoring do? Well, simply put, once the candidate goes through a 15-second process of enabling camera screen sharing, we basically take images every few seconds of the candidate. So this is me, and we use our AI to determine if they pass or fail. So in this case, our AI is looking at, is the person taking the assessment within the window the entire time? Are there other images of people? Are they using a mobile phone, for example? And so all these capabilities allow you to have a very fine-tuned understanding of if the candidate is who they say they are, and they are taking the assessments based on your expectations of how they should be taking it. And you have configurability on the back end to choose which of those capabilities you want to enable. For example, if you don't want mobile phones, you can simply turn that off. And then the last piece I wanted to cover before we jump into the post-hire really quickly is the new candidate experience. And so I want to give hats off to Patagonia. They've done an amazing job leveraging our new candidate experience. You can add beautiful visuals, you can add a logo, you can customize your text, you can even add emojis. This is probably my favorite video of all. It's an employee who's talking about why they work at Patagonia. Again, every candidate can be a customer. They can impact your brand. You want to be able to show your brand in the best possible light, and this gives you a great opportunity to do that. And of course, everything is configurable on the back end here, which I'm showing you in the criteria platform. And then the last piece before we jump into Q&A is Develop. So Develop is our post-hire product. It helps you onboard and develop talent. One of our most popular features is called Coach Bo, stands for Coach Bot. And we've spent a lot of time building Coach Bo to be empathetic, focus on concise conversations, business solutions, not make high stakes decisions. One of our most exciting features has just launched. It's called Develop Check-ins. So every Thursday, for example, I get a check-in from Coach Bo. It's from my boss. I click on it. I have a quick interaction with Bo, ask me how I'm feeling, ask me if I've had a productive week, what help I need in the upcoming week. It then summarizes it for me. And if I tell it it looks good, what it does is that it rolls up all that information into really easy to understand reports at the executive level. So this is something my CEO looks at. It gives him an instantaneous pulse of how the organization is doing and potential hotspots where he needs to focus attention. But it also has team leader reports. So if you drop down a couple of layers, you have the ability to have instantaneous insight into how your team is doing and where you need to focus your attention. So I have run through many, many quarters of work very, very quickly. I appreciate you listening, and I think we have hopefully 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A, but again, excited by the roadmap, and I thank you all for attending.
Thanks so much, Greg. That was terrific. There were a few questions that I took a stab at answering, but I think would love your insight into them as well. But one I haven't yet. Sabrina was asking if there are any French-speaking assessment tests available.
Yeah, so today what we have is many of our assessments are available in French in two flavors, in French Canadian and then what we call French French, so in Europe. And so those assessments themselves give a great understanding of someone's proficiency in the French language. We are contemplating after the Spanish language proficiency assessment, building a French language proficiency assessment as well. But if you would like to assess your candidate pool in French for cognitive abilities, for example, or personality, those are available today. And so let us know if that meets your needs.
Another one, Greg, that I took a stab at, but I think you'd have a more informed answer here, was how do you manage, this is Peter asking, how you manage expectations around the length of time it takes to go through the interview process? Because they see candidates sometimes grumble when it comes to extensive testing and interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing is a great question is what I believe is upfront is focus on the give and get. And so the one thing about our candidate experience is that you can customize at the very beginning. And so it's important. By the way, one thing about the candidate experience, we can auto-populate how long it really takes to take an assessment in a video interview. But I think what's helpful is you want to say, for example, this is a short assessment, whatever that time is, or short video interview. If they're using an assessment, you want to convey to them that They're going to get back a report if you use the Workplace Insights report that they will get back automatically. You just want to say, like, this is a key part of your process and how it ensures a fair process. And I think setting those expectations are upfront are really important. And like, let's be honest, if a candidate can't spend 10 to 20 minutes of time taking a combination of an assessment and or video interview, then they may not be the right individual for the role that you're looking for. And so while we don't want to create too much friction, I think there's a natural part of the process where you want to have candidates who are interested and engaged and are serious. Spend again, it could be as short as 5 minutes. Actually, it could be as short as 1 minute, to be honest with you, if you do a short interview question, to as long as 20 minutes. So hopefully that answers your question, Peter. If not, happy to chat more about it offline.
And Jam, I can speak to something there too as well, if that's
Excellent.
okay.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're doing is, we definitely want to shorten the timeline it takes for the candidate for a lot of reasons. But we've also used the customized pipelines and email customizations to communicate with the candidate and to be transparent at Patagonia. So when they take the test, we are encouraging them and building up their confidence. So we tailored our message that basically says, we just want to get to know you. We believe in you and we know you can do it. And that's really important in building the confidence of taking the test when you first see it as a candidate. But then also when they take the test, they get an automatic email from us. Here is our timeline. Here is when we will decide if you make it to the next step. You'll get an interview on this date. You'll get, the start date is here. That has reduced a lot of anxiety. So I think we don't talk enough about Criteria's pipeline automations and configurations that are actually really powerful as a mix.
That's great, Karina. Well said. And the way I see it right now, these assessments should work both ways. You're vetting the candidates, vetting the employer as much as the other way. And with turnover and burnout as high as they are, I think it's mutually beneficial to take a little bit of time and not rush a process. We're coming up on time here, but this last question, I think I'm going to take two of them and smush them into one because I think they're touching on the same subject, and both of you probably well suited to answer this. I'll start with you, Greg. Just around, with the async interviews and the ability to use all these AI tools that, and in some cases, it can get as advanced as even making it seem so that your face does. There's tools that have your face not move, even though you might be looking at another screen. How do you go about the process of just combating stuff that happens async with so many advanced AI tools out there? You're on mute,
Yeah,
Greg.
it's a great question, and I think I'll share the slide here because I didn't have a chance to go through it in detail. I think the most important thing is honestly solving it through a combination of just expectation setting and then technology. And so at the very top here, again, what I call candidate integrity is the candidate taking the assessment or the video interview in a fair way. Is you start in the very beginning, telling the candidate, setting expectations about how you want the process to go. Can they use AI or can't? Can they use other tools like just doing searches? And then once you do that, we'll do our job to ensure that there are lots of capabilities to ensure that the candidate is who they say they are. And I cover it off around proctoring, for example, as well. The other piece when you're doing a video interview is, Jen, if you are concerned about this, make it as short the introduction as possible. So you don't want to give maybe 30 minutes or 30 seconds rather to prep. You want to just have it be instantaneous. But I'd also say really one of the great things about that automated scoring capability part of interview intelligence I mentioned is that sure, candidates, if they have an interview question, maybe in advance, they can go type in what is a good answer. But the reality is they don't know how you're evaluating them, right? And so that's why I highly encourage customers who use our automated scoring to think about what a really good answer is and how it aligns with your company. Because again, to Karina's point, someone could go and type in, why do I want to work here? Right. And they can come up with beautiful answers. But if they're not aligned to Patagonia's, philosophies, competencies, they're not going to score well. And so you're looking for that authentic answer that AI is guessing, right? And so you want the candidate to draw that out. But I'd love to hear your perspective, Karina.
I think for us, we definitely, you know, we always, so the authenticity is so important. And, we have checks and balances in our own system um, that we use as well. Like, so, when the applicant applies, they go through our criteria assessment, but we really value the in-person interview, and that really helps us bring together the whole picture of making sure that we're getting the authentic person. So there's a lot of components that criteria foundationally sets up for us, but we actually reinforce that through our own natural processes as well. I think it's still an important piece. The AI interview tools are wonderful, and they are, I think it just depends on the role of when you bring them in and when they're appropriate. And I think that they're a truly supportive mechanism, but you need to have the candidate prepared for that and curated for that. And I loved what you said, Greg, about telling them what you do and don't want, right? And I think that's really the thing about Patagonia is we're pretty authentic about who we are and what we want. And so we're not afraid to have that communication of like what our expectations are and why it's so important we get to know you.
Thanks so much, Karina. I know we've gone a couple of minutes over. I appreciate a lot of folks still sticking around. The question also came up about whether we'll be sending a recording of this. Yes, everyone who registered will be getting a recording, and I do believe the recording will include the Q&A, so you'll get a transcript of this. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks again, Karina, Greg, and thank you everyone for tuning in from all over the country. We'll see you at the next Compass webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.